You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor, subscribe to the channel, leave your comments below, and be sure to smash that like button. Brian Kelly on the SEC Coaches Teleconference. As he was nearing the end, he was asked a question. I believe this was Scott Rabelais with the question. It sounded like this.
You mentioned John Emery. What would you say his status is for the game?
Unavailable.
And with that, LSU will be without John Emery for the third consecutive season opener. Of course, John Emery missed all of 2021. He missed the opener last year against Florida State due to an academic issue. And now we find out today that John Emery will also be unavailable for the Florida State game this year. Brian Kelly did not give a reason. My understanding is that this is that prolonged academic issue, and this might not be the only game he misses. So we'll have to wait and see what his status might be next week against Grambling. But John Emery will not be available for LSU against Florida State this weekend. There's really two components to this. There's the John Emery piece of it, for him personally, and then there's how his absence might affect LSU against Florida State. So we'll take those one at a time. You remember the first day of fall camp? The most notable thing the first day, when the media got to go watch and they were at the indoor facility practicing because it was a bajillion degrees outside, was there was no John Emery. And so we got to meet with Brian Kelly after that first practice, and the question was, hey, Coach, where's John Emery? Here's what Brian Kelly said.
He had to finish up an internship today, final. He's in great shape. Thanks for asking the question. He has done everything. He has been fabulous to work with. We're proud of his accomplishments, and he'll be with us tomorrow. But he had to get an internship finished up today.
I don't know that Brian Kelly was being truthful. At this point, it's fair to ask the question whether or not that was honest or not. Don't know. I can certainly appreciate and respect a coach going to bat for his player and giving his player cover. Brian Kelly's not accountable to the media or the fans. He is accountable to the 85 scholarship players, the 120 sets of eyeballs staring at him when they're in a team meeting in that locker room. So I can always appreciate a coach going to bat for his player. What I will say is not everyone is meant to go to college. That is, by the way, not a knock on John Emery at all. School just ain't for everyone. We live in a society where everyone thinks you got to go to college, and a lot of people amass large amounts of student loan debt to get degrees they'll never use. Thankfully for John Emery, he's going to have an opportunity to be a college graduate without having any student loan debt. So it's a great thing for him personally. And I admire the fact that the kid came back to school when he could have gone pro any of the last 2 years, battled through missing the entire 2021 season, could have left, came back last year, and now came back again. So I admire his perseverance, sincerely do. And I am really pulling for him that he makes it to the finish line and gets that piece of paper and gets that degree. But school is hard for a lot of people because the structure of that ain't for everybody. Told a story. Michael Ford. A lot of people ask why Michael Ford went pro after his third year at LSU. Because Michael Ford hated school. It ain't, and that's okay. That's okay. Like, as a society, we have to accept the fact that it's okay that school ain't for everybody. So put that aside. My understanding is John Emery will be available for LSU this season. He won't be against Florida State. We'll see if that extends beyond the Florida State game. But what we know now is he won't be there for Florida State. Here's maybe the good news for LSU. As much as we've talked about having 8 scholarship running backs, and what do you do with 8 scholarship running backs? How do you get all these guys involved when you got 8? Well, thank God you got 8 scholarship running backs. Because even though now you're down John Emery, and Brian Kelly told us earlier this week Armani Goodwin is doubtful for the game, even with those 2 guys out, you still got 6, including Josh Williams, who was your leading rusher among your running backs a year ago, Noah Cain, who led you in rushing among your running backs in the Florida State game a year ago. You've got Trey Bradford back. You've got Logan Diggs, the transfer in from Notre Dame, and then the 2 freshmen, Caleb Jackson, who we saw was magnificent in the scrimmage in Tiger Stadium, and Trey Holly, who's the state's all-time leading rusher in high school. So you got plenty of athletic dudes to choose from that you could turn around and give the ball to and say, go run. Yes, John Emery is a dynamic player. He's got game-breaking potential. We've seen it at times throughout his career. We just haven't seen it consistently. And this should just feel very comfortable and familiar because LSU's had to take the field a lot over the last 4 seasons without John Emery. And they'll have to do it again on Sunday against Florida State. What I will also say specifically about this matchup, in this game a year ago, LSU ran 30 times for 139 yards, 139. Now, they also had a 14-yard loss. If you remember, in the first series of the game, Garrett Dellinger snapped the ball over Jaden Daniels' head, and they lost 14 yards. So if you just look at the running plays, okay, sacks not included, or even include the sack yards, just take away that team loss of 14 yards. LSU averaged 5.2 yards per carry against Florida State. Now, Jaden Daniels ran 16 times for 114. He was awesome. Your running backs didn't have such a hot day. Your running backs combined to run 13 times for 39 yards, 3 yards a carry in this game last year. What I will say is you got a better offensive line. Can we all agree LSU's offensive line today is better than they were going in on the Wednesday before the Florida State game a year ago? Can we, that should be a unanimous agreement. Yes, LSU's offensive line better today than they were going into last year. You're settled at center with Charles Turner. You got 2 bookend tackles. You got 2 really veteran, a 3-year starter at left guard in Garrett Dellinger, Miles Frazier, who started for you last year and came in after a freshman All-America season at FIU. And then you've got Lance Hurd behind them and Marlon Martinez. You feel good about your offensive line. Good. You've got 2 tight ends that you really like a lot in, obviously, Mason Taylor. The name we haven't mentioned a lot is Connor Galbraith. He's the JUCO transfer who we saw run with the ones when they went to 12 personnel. Too tight. He wears number 89. He is a blocking tight end. He's going to be on the field as well. I like LSU's ability to run. And I'll remind you this. Florida State last year, their rush defense, and again, I get it last year, but I don't have anything to compare it to. And they returned the same guys from a year ago. And I will grant you, Florida State has added Braden Fisk, the defensive tackle transfer from Western Michigan, LSU went hard after Braden Fisk. They wanted him. LSU needed defensive tackles. They added 4 of them this year. And they tried to get Fisk. He picked Florida State. Good for them. But they needed him. Do you realize Florida State's run defense last year on a team that won 10 games was 75th in the country? They were 75th out of 131 in run defense. Florida State allowed 156 yards per game. They were 12 spots lower than LSU a year ago. The point is, yeah, stinks not having John Emery. You've been in that spot before. You played Florida State to a 1-point game a year ago without John Emery. Your offensive line's better. You're better at tight end. You're deeper and more talented at running back this year than you were last year. I think they're going to be just fine. And you're going against a defense that, while maybe there's this perception of them being a really dominant unit, they weren't. Florida State was not. They were very good against the pass a year ago. Florida State was. Run defense, 75th in the country. So they can get got. There's yards to be had. You got a dynamic runner at quarterback, and then all these athletes running the football, and that's not even to count Aaron Anderson, who I think will factor into the running game for LSU on Sunday night as well. Yes, it's unfortunate for John Emery. Would love to see him go out and have just a monster 5th season in Baton Rouge. But it's familiar for LSU because they haven't had him now for 3 straight openers. And I think LSU is going to be just fine on the ground against Florida State on Sunday. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.